Did the president break the law by engaging in this deal?
Oh, I think he clearly broke the law. The law says 30 days notice. He didn't give 30 days notice. Now, it is true that he issued a signing statement, but signing statements are not law. Signing statements are the president's opinion about what the law should mean. Now, it may be that the law is unconstitutional, a violation of his power as commander-in-chief, but no court has held that. The law is on the books.
When the Government Accountability Office recently ruled that the Obama administration broke the law when they carried off the swap involving 5 Guantanamo Bay prisoners for soldier Bowe Bergdahl, it received scant attention from the various media, though one would think a leadership toying with the law might bring more than a passing interest. It did. From our next guest. Welcome back to MidPoint. Executive Director of the Conservative Hispanic Society and talk show host on the Blaze Network, Chris Salcedo, joins us once again. Chris, around the dial, and here we go. Thanks for joining us.
Ed, my pleasure. Thanks a lot, man.
So, Chris, I would take it that you're probably shocked immediately. I mean, possibly even shocked beyond the realm of normal human belief that this administration was found guilty of breaking the law. I guess maybe what might catch a lot of people is, how did they get away with it so easily?
Well, I know, right? I mean, maybe I shouldn't be surprised that the mainstream press, the NBC News, ABC News, CBS News, I'm making air quotes with my fingers, right? These news outlets found this really an uneventful thing to cover, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised because that has been status quo for Obama administration since he took office. I mean, the violation of the Constitution itself just was greeted with a yawn by the mainstream press when the Supreme Court determined that Barack Obama violated the founding document itself with unconstitutional recess appointments. So I ought not be surprised, although one might start learning to be a little more discerning about where they get their news from, because if the Oval Office, the occupier of the Oval Office, can get away with violating the law with impunity and nobody in the mainstream press looks at it askance, maybe there ought to be a couple of questions we ought to be asking as a society about the status of our mainstream press.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and put up what the U.S. Government Accountability Office said. You won't see it here, but the viewers at home will be able, when they see that this is a conclusion that DOD, that's the Department of Defense, violated Section 8111. I won't go on and on because certainly there's a lot of words here. I mean, they'll get themselves a chance to see it. But this does raise the question, is this a rogue element involved in the Department of Defense? Is this the president? Is it coming from him? Who is this coming from? Because it just is very difficult for people to actually believe that a sitting president of the United States would get on a phone to somebody down at the DOD and say, go ahead, break the law, no problem, we're going to get away with it.
See, that's not necessary. Everybody that's been brought into this administration is already on board with the agenda, which is the Constitution. Forget about that. Let's do what we feel is right for the American people. That's their guiding light, their guiding principle, and that is how they conduct themselves. The law be damned. So they don't need a memo from Barack Obama to say, hey, violate the Constitution on this particular issue. It's already in the deal. It's why you put the most extremist left-wing individuals into positions of authority. That way, when they do violate the law, the guy at the top can just say, oh, let me be clear. I had no idea this was going on. It's plausible deniability. It's cynicism at its finest at play in the Obama administration. And as stated right off the top, it has become all too commonplace, and it is something that Americans ought not accept.
But in actuality, Chris, what can Americans do? Certainly this comes down to a breaking of a law. It's there. We know it. We have legislators. We have politicians in Washington. At least I think we still have politicians in Washington. I'm still trying to figure out if they're still there occasionally. But supposedly we're supposed to have the people there who are going to watch over this and do something about it. So while the Americans can be outraged, you certainly are, as are others. What really can they do about it?
Well, there are a couple of things you can do. This is something that's actionable. You can fire off letters to the aforementioned news agencies that I told you about. Say you will not be patronizing their channels, you'll not be watching their channels, because evidently you cannot get the straight information from the agendized media. You can start off by changing your viewing habits. Number two, you could get a little more involved in politics and make sure we're sending the right caliber of individuals up to Capitol Hill. Get engaged, make sure your friends, your neighbors, and your family are engaged in the political process. Everybody looks at politics and says, oh my gosh, that's so bad. Politics is bad. No, politics is something we all ought to be engaged in to make sure we don't get rogue administrations like the Obama administration. And lastly, hold them accountable. And you can do that again by doing what I recommended, but by also burning up their phone lines, making sure you're getting out there and becoming activists. You know, for too long, the left have been the only ones out there being activists. Unfortunately, in the United States, now conservatives, even though we're busy paying the freight and working for a living, we too have to find some time to become activists and make sure that our government is behaving itself.
All right, Chris, here comes the $64 trillion question then. Why is it that we continue to say the same things over and over again? Get out, vote, hold politicians accountable. Yet here we are in 2014. We are still in the same rut. We still have politicians in office on both sides who don't get the job done, who basically are there to collect a paycheck. Why don't we hold people accountable? Why is it taking us so long to clean it out and to understand it is still a voter responsibility?
Re-engaging we conservatives, re-engaging in education and re-engaging in the pop culture. You start changing those two things around, then all of a sudden, people start expecting, wait a minute, this is unacceptable for the occupier of the Oval Office and his administration.
Chris, unfortunately, I'm going to have to interrupt you here because the audio feed on your system is just, we can barely hear you. There's a slight technical problem there. So I tell you what, we only got a couple seconds left anyway. I'm going to thank you for appearing. Please, let's do it again. We have a whole lot more to talk about one of these days very soon. We'll get the technicals all cleared up. We'll do it again. Chris Salcedo, the Blaze Radio Network, thanks so much for joining us.
You bet.
All right, buddy. Also on KSEV in Houston, that's AM 700. Again, the points that he makes up, though, are ones that we have talked about many times here, yet it seems like we always seem to come around to the exact same issue. It is always about accountability. It is always about holding people's feet to the fire. It is always about holding politicians' feet to the fire. Yet, for whatever reason, there are certain politicians in America that always get reelected. They always find themselves right back in Washington. They always find themselves once again just cashing a paycheck that we, the American people, are writing for them. It still comes down to personal responsibility and people getting the job done. That's really where it always ends. Next hour on MidPoint, we'll hear from one who has been held captive by the enemy and was also friends with the American journalist beheaded by ISIS. The future of weapons technology. Money Master Jeff Yasteen, Inside the Beltway with John Gizzi, a whole lot more. And News Call is next.